Hi, everybody. It's Friday. Oh my goodness, what is it? It's the 12th. Is that right, Anne? Is it the 12th?
I don't know.
Nobody
Yes,
knows.
yes,
We
it's
know
the
don't know
12th.
what day it is anymore.
It's
It's
the
like it's
12th. It's the 12th.
it all runs together. So it's Friday, February 12th. 2 days before Valentine's Day. So I wish everybody lots and lots of love. Um, if you don't know where it is in your life, look inside. So it's there. We're going to be talking to, well, let me do my usual because this goes on YouTube and hi, YouTube viewers. So you'll have a context. We've been doing this community gathering every Friday since April 17th. So this is something like the 42nd or 44th. I don't know. We've done a lot of them. And the original purpose was mainly because I had friends, theater friends, colleagues, artists, producers, everybody just not knowing what to do. It's just feeling isolated and feeling helpless and alone. And I actually asked whether people would like to get together in a Zoom room. Since I've got one of those professional accounts where I can have people in a Zoom room and we can stay more than 40 minutes. So everybody said yes. And I've been having guest speakers every Friday at 4:30 since April 17th. And people are coming together. And in addition to getting a lot of great information and meeting some truly wonderful people and wonderful speakers, they're able to feel like they're part of a community. Um, and I'm honored to be able to offer that to people, and I'm glad that people keep coming back week after week after week. I'll keep doing this as long as you keep coming back. Tonight, we're going to be talking. We're always talking about making art during a pandemic. I mean, that's what this is about. Um, Specifically, we have a guest with us, Anne Hamburger of EnGarde Arts, and she she's got a very varied background, but a lot of what she's done is outside of the conventional realm of theater. She does things a little different. I think she's known for site specific work, and this is a time for site specific work. If you know what's going on with the city and the reopening of theater, you may know that a lot of the initial opening of the arts in this city and in this or in these boroughs is really going to be uh, well street theater. It's going to be street theater and site specific certainly. Um, in some cases can fit that title as well. Um, so without any further rambling from me, I'm going to bring Anne on. Anne, say hi and tell us a little bit about On Guard Arts and its origins. Let's go into the origin story.
Sure. Well, hi, everybody out there in virtual land. So I first began avant-garde arts in 1985. I was a student at the Yale School of Drama graduate program, and I started the theater as my third year thesis project. And the mission of the theater was to create site-specific work, which is to use the streets and neighborhoods and historic landmarks as our stages. And that was work that I did for actually 13 years. And I worked with a lot of artists who now are well known. And Bogart, Chuck Mee, even Jonathan Larson. I gave him his first professional production before he
Nice,
created Rent. We did a show called JP Morgan Saves the Nation, where we closed off Wall Street at the intersection of Wall and Broad for 6 weeks. We did a show with unfortunately, he passed away from AIDS, but his name is Reza Abdo. And we did a piece called Father Was a Peculiar Man where we closed off 4 square blocks of the meatpacking district and did a piece with 60 performers and a marching band. Worked a lot with Tina Landau, who did 3 shows with us. She did Orestes and Trojan Women, and she also did a show called Stonewall, which is now actually going to be brought back by Little Island, who's commissioning On Guard Arts and Tina to create the 2021-22 version of what Stonewall was then for this new park, Little Island.
That's actually pretty darn exciting. So I know about Little Island and its plans to reopen. Do you actually can you actually share with us when they anticipate being able to
All
start?
I can share with you is that a commission is underway.
Okay.
So, plans are for 22, 23, but they're not set yet because Tina is furiously writing. So, but so I did site-specific work for 13 years. Then I left New York and was the artistic director of La Jolla Playhouse for a year. And I was in San Diego when Disney called and said, we're looking for somebody to come in and found and run a global division for Disney as the kind of an executive vice president. And so I almost thought it was Halloween because I never expected to get that phone call, but I did. And so I literally worked for Disney for close to 9 years, creating theater all around the world in the parks, and brought a lot of extraordinary people to the Disney company like Bobby and Kristen Anderson Lopez, who first did a show in the Animal Kingdom and then went on, as we all know, to create Frozen. And then when I left Disney, I came back to New York and, against all reason and sanity, decided to relaunch EnGarde Arts.
I want to actually I want to insert this. I think it's really important to know that Anne has spanned from the avant-garde to the purely commercial. I mean, you've been involved in a wide range of theater experiences, and I'd like to think that is formed who you are, and in some ways it's helped form your aesthetic. Unless you think that the 9 years in Disney was just an oops.
No, it certainly wasn't an oops. I'm very grateful to have worked for this. I mean, I basically had an entrepreneurial endeavor with the resources of a multi-billion-dollar corporation. So, and they let me do what I had to do. I mean, the first large scale production I did was Aladdin. Francesca Zambello directed it. And before we did that show, the natural lifespan of their shows were 3 years, and Aladdin was up for 13 years.
Wow.
And performed tens of thousands of performances. So
can I ask you something? Having come from a background of doing site-specific work, and then suddenly having this huge canvas to work on, what was that like?
I mean, that could be the subject of a whole hour, and I'm going to get to the topic today.
Okay,
I will
okay.
only tell you one story, which is I had been with the company for about 5 years. I was sitting on the ground in Disneyland, and it was the 25th, or I can't even remember, but it was an anniversary of Disneyland. I think it was the 50th anniversary of Disneyland. And we had designed the parades and the fireworks shows and all of that. And I turned to a friend who was sitting next to me and I said, there are more people attending this one night than have attended the work of my entire artistic career. There were like over 30,000 people there. And I said, there's something about that makes me really happy. And there's something about that is really sad. Anyway, I had a great time there. I learned a lot, and I'm really glad I'm not there anymore. So I came back to New York. I decided to relaunch EnGarde Arts. I had let my 501c3 go. I literally had to start from the ground up, but I decided that given that I'd been gone for over a decade, I didn't just want to go back to doing what I did before when the world was fundamentally different and 9/11 hadn't happened. And I really felt that it was of great importance to me to lift up underrepresented voices and do work with social change at its core, which is what I did. And we did a show about the impact of war on veterans and their families that was at BAM and went to 40 cities around the country. We did another show called Wilderness that was about teenage mental health based on the true stories of parents and their kids who were sent to wilderness programs. Our most recent show, which was shut down because of COVID, which I was very proud of, called Fandango for Butterflies and Coyotes, was written by an all Latinx team. And it was about a group of undocumented immigrants who come together on the night of an ice raid to seek solace in each other's company through participating in a fandango, which is a celebration of music and dance. And because we didn't want to perform that for predominantly, we wanted to make sure that we reached into the communities that were affected by the subject matter at hand. We decided to do this as a 5-borough tour. And we opened at La Mama. We got a great review in the Times, critics pick. We sold out. We then went to Queens, where we performed in a much smaller venue. And there are a lot of, and that was a great experience. Then we went to Snug Harbor Cultural Center, which was extraordinary and really rewarding. And then we loaded into the Bronx and were shut down. We literally had loaded our set in. The vice president of the school came in and said, "I'm sorry, we can't allow you to perform tonight because the mayor has shut everything down."
Ouch. But it's an ouch we all experienced.
Yes.
Let me-
I think what's important is when that happened, I came home and I said, you know what, as artists, it is our, well, I won't kind of be pedantic in that way, but I will say for me as an artist, it is very, very important to always look at what's going on in the outside world and to be taking that into consideration with everything I do, to really be looking at what's going on right now. And I literally had a reckoning. I said, you know, when this began a year ago, I said, I see people saying they're going to wait till this is over. What now we all know, God knows what that means. But it was early on in the pandemic. And then there were other people that said, okay, now we're going to move online. We're going to, we're going to figure out what's happening with how we take theater into the mobile arena. And some of those efforts have been wonderful and some of them have been flawed. God love everybody for trying anything. But I said, I'm not doing that. I said, one thing we often forget is that storytelling is not dependent on buildings. It's not dependent on stages. What is it dependent on? It's dependent on somebody to write them and an audience to listen. Somebody to write them, somebody to perform them, and an audience to listen. And I felt like, Hamburger, you've been doing site-specific, you did site-specific work for 13 years at Disney. You've created performances that happen in all kinds of different places. You know how to do this. And so I said, I'm not waiting. And the first thing I did is I said, what's most important to you right now? Which is another thing that I think is so important for us to ask ourselves, And I was really fascinated by what kind of impact the pandemic was having upon us emotionally, and especially like how it was affecting our dreams. So I thought, it'd be really great to do a show where we could bring the dreams of a dozen playwrights to life. And so I went and I asked a dozen writers, what are you dreaming about right now? And is it possible for me to share my screen or no?
Absolutely. So what
Okay,
I'm going to do,
I'm going to share something.
I can't do it yet. I have to make you a co-host.
Right.
So, and delighted to do it.
Okay, great. So this is actually happening. I'm very excited to say. I conceived this, and then I brought in John Eisner. So for those of you who don't know John, he's the founder and artistic director of the Lark. And Irina Krushelina, she's an extraordinary visionary and scenic designer and visual dramaturg and an amazing human being. And I have to, here. So as I said, when I started thinking about who those playwrights might be, I thought, well, who knows more about playwrights than, in my opinion, anybody else in the country? That's John Eisner. And what's so wonderful about my relationship with John is it's a friendship that completely blossomed during COVID and a partnership. And I am really proud and happy to say that John and Irina and I have an extraordinary and wonderful collaboration. So these are the playwrights that I reached out to, and they all said yes. It's an amazing group of people. I'm always committed to making sure that the work I produce, it represents diverse voices, and also spans generations. And there's everyone here from Martina Majok, who won a Pulitzer, to
Ellen
Emily.
McLaughlin from Angels in America, Kara
Yeah,
Ditzevich, Lucy Thurber,
I mean,
many names we know very well.
yeah. So I basically
Emily
said,
Mann, oh my goodness.
so I said to all of these writers that what I wanted them to do, the assignment was for them to write a dream that was 3 minutes long, and for them to record that dream on their iPhones, and send that dream back to us. And that what we were going to be doing was bringing each of their dreams to life through sets, lights, video, and sound. And then we've lined up this amazing group of designers. So this is an all women's team. And Irina, as I said, is the lead designer. Brittany Bland's an extraordinary video and projection designer. It's been out of Yale a couple of years. Jeanette Yu, lighting designer, and Rina Inakwe is the sound designer. And I picked these particular women because they all have experience in installation design, as well as designing for the proscenium stage, which I felt was a very important skill set. So to describe what it is, it's part theater piece, part art installation. And as I said, each room is being brought to life in its own fashion. It's being presented by Arts Brookfield, and it's going to open on May 6th, and it's going to run for 3 weeks. And if you all have been down to Brookfield Place where the Winter Garden is, there's a big empty store that used to be a Burberry. And that is where this is going to be situated site specifically. So if you see this drawing to the right, the audience, which will be pulsed through 2 at a time, so that everything is COVID, we're calling it COVID responsible because who knows at this point what is COVID safe. But we're taking all the precautions to not only protect the crew, but to protect our audiences. This is a no-touch environment. And this can be open all day because it only takes 2 people to run it. It takes a stage manager who will be able to see into all these rooms. There'll be security cameras in these rooms with a God mic, in case somebody decides they're not going to follow the protocol and they want to lay down for a half an hour, which they cannot do. So the audience will be coming in actually through a secret entryway that is a security hallway and making their way through the piece. As I said, we may hear the playwright speaking, we may see a video of the playwright performing. These images are kind of inspirational images that Irina is using to design each of the rooms, which are very small. We are actually presenting this to regional theaters. We've had some great conversations with some regional theaters who are very interested in how they can find a way back to their audiences. And we're talking about partnering with museums, talking about partnering with real estate developers to be able to bring this to life in other cities. The other thing that I'm very excited about is we've designed something. I'm just going to, go through this quickly. I love this quote though from Lucy Thurber that says, "A dozen dreams is one of the first things that someone has asked me to do that is of the moment. This project is a creative recognition of where we are while allowing there to be movement forward." I'm kind of very excited about this as well. So after the audience goes through all these 12 rooms, we're going to have a space where people can share their own dreams. And we're calling it room 13. And people will be able to write what their dreams are about, as well as go online. And hashtag room 13 will bring people to an Instagram site that will enable them to share their own dreams as well. So I'm kind of very, very excited about doing this piece. And it's a piece that can happen now. So as well as along with this piece, what you're doing, which is,
Well,
I said,
let me just jump in. I just want to make sure I clarify this.
yeah.
So what you've presented is incredibly visual, and I imagine that there's soundscapes, and I imagine that you've used your sound designer very well. There's also, I mean, this all started with the words of the writers. So each one of these rooms is we are hearing a story being told by one of the writers. And
That was right. That's right. And each writer was asked to write something that was going to be 3 minutes long. So we will hear the writers' voices. In a couple of cases, we'll actually see the writers, but it's mostly about hearing their voices. And then there'll be a lighting design, there'll be a sound design that's addition to the writers' voices, and there'll be video and projection. So each room will feel totally like its own world.
do you have funding? Do you mind my asking? Do you have funding for this? We're a producers group, so you're going to get questions like, do you have funding? How do you fund something like this?
Yes, well, we did. We got a very generous presentation fee from Arts Brookfield, and then we're funding the rest of it through Department of Cultural Affairs gave us ongoing support. New York NISCA gives us ongoing support, and we have individual support, and our board plays a very important part in all of this too. And Maria Torres, who's here, is one of our newest board members. She just joined the board, and I'm very happy that she has decided to. She's also on the board of SDC, and she's an amazing artist and choreographer and friend who I met actually many years ago when I worked for Disney, and she was choreographing a show for Diane Paulus on one of our cruise ships. And what is so great about that is that we got back in touch with each other. Too through LinkedIn, became fast friends, talked a lot with each other about what we were hoping for the future and what EnGarde's mission was. And I think I froze. Oh, and Maria decided to throw her support towards EnGarde Arts, which I'm very grateful about. She's a fantastic person and spirit and soul and artist.
And I'm so honored, Annie. You're amazing.
Yeah, this is actually a pretty amazing project. It's very impressive. I want to actually pull some few things into the conversation.
Before we do, I just think it's important for me to mention also that I have 2 other projects that are happening in 2021. So I do just briefly want to mention them, and then I'm happy to, because they're super important. So the other thing I did with all of this is that I approached the two business improvement districts, the Meatpacking Business Improvement District and the Alliance for Downtown New York, which is in the Wall Street area. And I said to them, I think you can use the arts for urban to revitalize your neighborhood. And both of them really loved the idea of doing site-specific work in their neighborhood. So I have a festival called Downtown Live that is opening up Saturday, the 16th of May, and running for 2 weekends. And we're presenting all together 9 different artists, performers, musicians, playwright, directors, etc. And one of those sites is a loading dock. And
okay, that's where I was trying to get to that. I was going to get to the specific sites that you were working with. Yeah.
And one of those sites is a plaza in front of a skyscraper, and another of those sites is a plaza underneath an overhang in front of another skyscraper.
I've been wanting to ask you this ever since I heard about it, though.
Yeah, so
what have you planned for a loading dock?
Because we have to, first of all, loading dock is a natural stage, right?
Yeah.
So that was good. And also because it easily gave us a way to limit attendance. So knowing that the laws right now are that you can only have 50 people gather, that was really important to us as well, that we figure out spaces where we could control the number of people. And the festival that we're doing in the meatpacking district, which is the 17th through the 19th of September, has all the performers in storefront windows, except for Mimi Leon, who, I don't know if you all know her, she's a MacArthur award-winning designer, is doing an immersive piece where people actually walk in a space and see an environment come to life and then leave. So all of this is about following COVID guidelines. Yes, we do mic them. We will mic, yeah, we have a great production company that's working with us both on the meatpacking district and the downtown live called Mosaic NYC. They're fantastic. And the thing I'm most proud of, or one of the things I'm very proud of, is that between these 3 projects, EnGarde Arts is giving paid employment to close to 200 theater artists, technicians, and production workers at a time where
Bravo.
there is so much suffering and so much unemployment. And I am we're busy as we could possibly be. We're adding a staff person, but I'm really, really proud of what we're doing. And these business improvement districts don't see this as philanthropy. They see this as using the arts for economic development, which I also think is very important. So now I'll shut up.
What I wanted to get to I know the specific. I knew that I was fascinated by the loading dock thing. It's like she's using the loading docks. Why? How does that work? But also the storefront. And are you? I know that we talked to Carla Hope Miller last week, and she talked about. We talked about stoop, front stoop art.
Oh, I did one of those too. I forgot to mention. In October, I did a piece where I asked David Greenspan, who's a wonderful downtown artist, and he did a piece called Wartime Canteen for a New Era. And I worked with the Street Activity Permits Office, and I worked with the 84th Precinct. And we did 3 shows, and we put X's on the street. We told people that after we had 50 reservations that we were sold out, even though in a way that's kind of like a false distinction, obviously, because you can't really sell out like on the street. But we worked very closely with the police department, and I have to tell you, the community policing department was phenomenal. He was like, the Street Activity Permits Office was like, only close off half the street, and the policeman said, we're not doing that. He's like, look, if you close off half the street, you know what's going to happen? People will be standing in the street, traffic will come along, somebody will get hit. It's not good. So we're closing off the whole street. And I was like, but this is a bus route. I didn't know we could close off the street if it was a bus route. And he said, listen, I've been in the force for 27 years. How long's the performance? I said, it's 40 minutes. He said, if it's 40 minutes, it's okay. If something goes wrong, you know what? We won't do it again. So I kind of love this guy. He rerouted the buses for us. He, let us close off the street. And I'll share a picture of you with you of what it looked like. You see, everybody stood on their X's. They were very obedient, and there were people in the back that walked by. And
that was actually a detail I was curious about. So you actually do have to You have to put X's on this.
We did. We had I've got a bunch of young volunteers and interns and stuff going and marking off the street, and people loved it. They loved it. This was in October. They were so happy to come together to see something that was funny and uplifting and experience this as a community. So somebody asked me what was the third project. So A Dozen Dreams. You know, also, if you want, you can go to EnGarde Art's website, or you and get on our mailing list, which is spelled the French way, EnGardeArts, or you can follow us on Instagram.
Well, I'm going to put it in the chat for you. So it's EnGarde Arts at
Yeah,
where?
you know, I can do that if you want, everyone here. So it's, yeah, so it's EnGardeArts.org. And then, yeah, our Instagram is also EnGarde Arts, and or my name, which is this. Yeah.
There
so,
it is. Okay, we got it now.
Yeah. So, I mean, we're going to be doing more of these stoop performances and
The stoop performances, yes, all right.
yeah, and but you know, I have 3 major projects this year.
You have they're huge. They're huge projects. I mean, God bless you for it.
Our budget has actually doubled this year. It's wild. I mean, you know, and I've never been so happy to not have real estate in my life.
Real estate, indeed. So again, this is kind of a nice extension from last week's discussion with Carla, because we talked a lot about the fact that in reopening theater, reopening the arts, and reopening New York as a viable center of arts, which is what it always has been. The way that the city and the plan is for starting it is street. It's just street theater. It's just outdoor theater, site specific and street crossover, but they're not exactly the same. So some of the site specific things that you've done in the past have not necessarily been outside, right?
Most of it was, I mean, we did a few indoor productions, but really, I mean, you know, we did a piece called Another Person is a Foreign Country. That was a beautiful piece with Hamburger that was in the courtyard of the Towers nursing home. And it was about how the way in which people are different or marginalized by society. So, and that was beautiful. And Anne used the, there was scaffolding and the windows and the doorways as the set in a way. We had a blind choir that sang as we had water cascade down the side of the building. Really a lot of beautiful stuff. But, you know, stuff we did in the 80s and 90s you can't do now. I mean, like when Little Island got in touch with us and said, can you bring back Stonewall? I was like, we can't bring back Stonewall. There were 70 people in Stonewall. There were, you know, I can't remember, like 8 or 12 professional actors, and all the rest were like people from the community. Like Actors Equity Association would never let us do that. All this stuff we did in the 80s, we just couldn't do anymore. I mean, my first EnGarde Arts production, I had a mountain climber scaling down the side of a building. You know, it was an empty building. It was like crazy. This guy let me do it. And he's a real estate developer who I ran into like just before the pandemic. And I was like, oh my God, it's you. And he was like, oh my God, it's you. And I said, you don't by any chance in the dark reaches of your file cabinet have the contract that you and I signed.
So I just want you to know that
I would never let you do that today. And I was like, I wouldn't do it either.
You're also a nice add-on to, we did a panel about 4 or 6 weeks ago with Anita Durst. And I talked to Anita, and Anita said that she was so excited that you were doing this for us. She said she was your intern?
Anita was my intern, and I gave Anita her first job in the theater.
She loves you. She wants to do a panel with you. Would you do it?
Oh, I would love to. I would love to. Anita, so Anita's father in 1990, 42nd Street was filled with, you know, porn palaces and people on the street selling, you know, license plates. You know, I mean, it was dark and dingy, and all those theaters that are now open were closed. Wait, yeah, showed pornographic movies. And Douglas Durst, her father, owned the Victory Theater before it was renovated. And I went to him and said, I want to do a play in here. And he said, okay. And so we did this piece called Crowbar. The audience sat on the stage. The actors were in the balconies, the boxes, and the aisles. Anita was in our show. She was like 19, I think, at that time. And it was the first show. It kind of 42nd Street kind of has blocked us out of the history of 42nd Street, which I'm not real happy about, because we did the first live show that was on 42nd Street in over 60 years. We were the first ones to do that. And it was a huge hit. People loved it. The theater was dusty and musty and old and beautiful. And I actually got married in the Victory Theater.
Really?
Yeah, like after we did that, a couple years later, I asked them if I could use it for my wedding, and they said, "Sure, we'll rent it to you for $500 for the night."
That's amazing.
Yeah, and we had
Having
Rafe
done a wedding, I
married
know.
on the marquee. It was pretty great.
Having done a wedding, I know that $500 is amazing.
I do just want to say one thing with regard to what you asked about site specific. In reality, the purely literal definition of site specific is that people create pieces or spaces. But
Oh, I have snowmen.
But the truth is, there's site adaptive, there's site this, there's immersive, there's all these terms.
Yeah.
But basically, so I just use it kind of for everything. And in reality, I kind of use it for anything that is a performance space that is used in that is not a performance space, that is used as a performance space, like a storefront window or a loading dock. I mean, when we're doing the pieces in the storefront windows, because we want people to be appropriately distanced, we are actually going to put up 2 television screens so that there's some people that can see the actual performers, and there are people that can stand and watch the television screens. So we don't have too many people squished together. We purposely made the performances relatively short. Also with the one that we're doing downtown, because in 2 of the places people will need to stand as opposed to sitting in chairs. So, the kind of COVID regulations and attention to safety, you wouldn't believe how much time all that has taken. And it's
I would. I definitely would.
Even in terms of how we're doing load-in and tech for A Dozen Dreams.
It's also become a huge budget item for producers, but it's necessary. It has to be done. I wanted to cover one other thing with you before I open. I want the room to also know that you have a virtual hand raise. If you look at your reactions button, which is at the bottom of your screen, next to breakout rooms and before more, you'll see a reactions. That gives you the ability to virtually raise your hand. In some versions of Zoom, you have to open up your participants window, and there's a virtual hand raise in your participants window at the bottom. That's as much as I know. So if you don't find it either one of those places, just ask questions. Put it in the chat and say, I want to ask a question, and I'll call on you. The other thing I want to talk about is your mission. Are you fluent in your mission statement? Because I've read it off of your site. Is that, do you kind of know it?
I think we want to lift up underrepresented voices and create work with social justice at its core. But I also think lately I have thought about words that epitomize what we do, because Heather Cohn, who's my wonderful executive director, has said something today which is true. She's like, "EnGarde Arts is always changing," So I think a word that's been very important to me these days is pivot. When coronavirus came and shut everything down, I said, okay, now it's very important to pivot. I've even thought of ideas of how we could use our theaters, that are closed theaters, as immersive environments where we could bring people through. The only way A Dozen Dreams was going to work was to think of it more as a museum exhibition, where our guests were going to pulse through 2 at a time, but the piece could be open all day long, 6 days a week. So it's you know, because we are not in a place, and won't be for quite some time, where people can come together 200 at a time, 150 at a time, even more than 50 at a time. How do we think of innovative ways to tell stories in real time? You know, there's certainly, you know, a lot of stuff going on online, but how do we do it in real time? There, site specificity, or performing in unconventional spaces, performing in different kinds of ways, enable us to do things in real time. And I think that is important because people, somebody said to me yesterday in one of the meetings that I had, we're going to have to learn how to be together again. And I thought that was very profound for me and true, because we are so used to being in our homes morning, noon, and night and communicating with each other over Zoom. And thank God for Zoom, right? But it, you know, we
Well,
have
I want to acknowledge you because one of the questions that I never got to ask, but you answered anyway, was how the pit we all talk about the pivot. March 12th was the day of the pivot. We all how the pivot affected your mission and what you're doing, and you've actually spoken to that very eloquently throughout this whole discussion. That was a key question that I was curious about. We've pivoted as well. I mean, we just basically, after a couple of weeks of my saying I can't do this, I don't want to learn about, I don't want to learn Zoom, I don't want to learn virtual, I don't want to do this. I stopped saying I don't want to do it, and I just started doing it. And I think for a lot of us, you're a magnificent example of somebody who pivoted beautifully and elegantly. So a lot of us are all pivoting in different ways and adapting to the virtual. I'm adapting to virtual. You're rethinking what you're doing in terms of social distancing. Do you think? From what I'm hearing, I know the answer to this. You're not going to go back to old ways. This is now part of your vocabulary. This is part of who you are now.
Well, I think there's something else very important for me to talk about. And this is not about the art. This is about what you said, you know, there's producers here, about the business model of what we're doing. The reason our budget doubled this year for 2021 is because we pursued relationships with business partners that see the arts as an economic development tool and are willing to pay for it. So they're paying for these festivals in total. And I'm taking that money and putting it out into an artistic community that is filled with artists who are taking risks, artists of color, playwrights, directors, composers, designers, who are bringing these spaces to life in really wonderful ways of all generations. I really feel that anyone who, my opinion is that anyone who thinks that the pandemic will end and theater will go back to business as usual is not looking at the whole picture, because I don't think there is a business as usual anymore. I think that those who are engaged in philanthropic activities are being pulled at in more directions than ever before. We have a government that's under attack. We have truth in storytelling and press that's under attack. We have homelessness, we have poverty, and I think that's already hurt the theater and it will continue to. So we are to think about what is a way forward, not only artistically, but also what can help to sustain us. What can help to sustain us when we have an organization? I think that thinking differently has to affect every level of our organization. And I see somebody's got their hand up. I just want to say one other thing that I think is super important, that is about how I've been affected by the pandemic and Black Lives Matter. So since I came back from Disney, EnGarde Arts' work has been about lifting up underrepresented voices and paying attention to doing that by who are the creative teams we hire and what kinds of themes are we expressing in this work. And then when the whole Black Lives Matter thing happened, I thought, you know, that's not good enough. It has that equity, diversity, and inclusion must be in every facet of our organization. One part of that is obviously to really make a renewed effort to find people of color on our board, to have a diverse group of voices on our board, and a diverse group of perspectives. But the other piece of that is, honestly, I'm a founder of an organization, but I'm a 67-year-old white woman. And I feel that potentially moving forward, there are ways to think about organizational structures that have to do with shared leadership models. And so I'm very interested in looking at how EnGarde Arts can transition over the next 3 to 5 years from being an organization which supports a single vision, i.e. mine, to an organization with a shared leadership model that has diverse perspectives and diverse vision. So that the way I'm approaching equity, inclusion, and diversity is not just through programming, not just through board, but also through our management and through our structure. So it's every single facet, and and to really take the time to think it through and do the planning to make it happen. I think that is how what I feel is my personal responsibility. But we should give people a chance to ask a question.
Well, I just want to say that
I'll get off my.
No, don't ever get off your soapbox, please. It's one of the most precious soapboxes I've ever seen. And will you consider being a guest here every week?
I don't have time, Bob. I don't have time.
Thank you so much for all the things that you're saying. There's a couple questions from chat that I want to bring up, and then I want to invite Judy and TCAT to ask their questions. Murray wants to know if you've just curious. She wants to know if you ever used the space on Governor's Island.
No, never have.
So it's not really the thing that you would do.
No, I mean, the Governor's Island's interesting, but there's a lot of issues with Governor's Island. They don't have power. You can only do stuff during the day. They have a big selection committee, I mean, so.
Well, Murray's under the impression that they're giving space away for free. So there must be some fine print on that.
I mean, it's probably changed since I went there a couple of years. We did a piece called Red Hills, and we tried to see if we could do our piece there, and we didn't get selected. And since then, I haven't really made an effort. But it's a curated, I mean, it's gone, I don't know, it's gone through a lot of incarnations, so I'm not sure what the most recent one was. When we put in an application in 2017, it was curated to accept certain projects and not others.
So it's interesting that, Murray, now that you mentioned it, one of our member companies and friends for years is Rising Sun Performing Arts, and they actually were doing ongoing work at Governor's Island. I might invite them to come in and talk about the experience, if that would be of interest to you.
There was a woman who spoke at TEDx who was in charge at the time, and they were looking for content, and they said that they would let anybody in there, no charge whatsoever, as long as they brought whatever they needed to set it up and everything else. That's why I was asking.
Well, I don't think Anne has enough projects yet, so I think she should consider another one. Judy, please ask your question. Hello. You have to take yourself off mute.
I did the wrong one. You're fabulous, and your dream project is just, you've got me so excited to go see that. When I was in school, my big project was to design lights for a green table with no dancers. It's like heaven. My question is, when you're funneling people through in pairs, is there a limited time for each room?
Yes, so each dream is 3 minutes. And we are fully anticipating that some dreams will be a little longer, some dreams will be a little shorter. And that's where the sound designer comes in. So the whole experience in the room will probably be, and then some of the rooms have these kind of hallways to go to the next that we're designing, and some of them really don't. So it's a complex puzzle, and I'm sure the first few audiences are going to be like, hold please, as we figure it out. But basically, we're thinking that it'll be about 4 minutes between the dream and going to the next room for each one. So with 12 rooms, it'll be about 48 minutes.
Right. So the hour I was reading on your site but you had said it was an hour experience.
It's about, well, then people go to room 13 and they'll be able to write their dreams. And
Remember, she hasn't done this before.
I haven't.
So she has the timing planned, but that doesn't mean it's going to happen that way.
Well, it's got to happen pretty close, because in order for this to work, we need to make sure that if the people that are in room 3 don't go to room 4 before the people in room 4 go to room 5. So yeah.
Are you going to have any kind of cleaning of each room before people go in? Or?
Well, we're not, it's a no-touch environment. So we're purposely designing it that way. And we're also designing it so there are no ceilings on each room. So there's air circulation, and if we need to add some small HEPA filters, we'll do that. We're kind of investigating that with our production company now, but everyone needs to wear a mask, and people are separated by at least 6 feet, and walls. So
part of the design is going to be X's on the floor.
That's right.
well, it's not X's on the floor, but there's these small rooms, and only, if you come by yourself, you go through it by yourself. If you come with 2 people, you go through it with 2 people. We're not putting people together who didn't come together, because then that obviously becomes dangerous from a COVID perspective. So we're really kind of, we'll be doing cleaning and all of that kind of stuff. But yeah, it's.
Thank you. It's wonderful. I can't wait.
Thank you.
TCAT, would you like to ask your question now?
Yes, hi. I'm also very interested in the installation. I was working with a museum exhibition designer, and we also came up with our end room where people could react in real time. Could you tell me a little more about what you plan for that?
Room 13?
Mm-hmm.
Well, what we're planning is that after people leave the last room, which is Emily Mann's room, is the last room, because it's this beautiful homage to hope and light. They can participate if they want or not. There's going to be some kind of surface for them to write on. And then we haven't fully worked it out yet, fully developed it, but then if they want to, they will get instructions for how hashtag room 13 will take them to our Instagram site where they can send their dreams.
That sounds great. We were trying to figure out how to intermix what our attendees had heard with their own voices. So if you guys can figure out that before we do ours, yay.
I'll let you know, because who knows?
So TCAT, I want you to stay for this, because there's a question in the chat that I think is a very interesting question. It's from a writer's point of view. Dennis wants to know, well, he's essentially asking, how does a writer fit into a site-specific work? Does the writer initiate it? Does the writer have to initiate it with technical people, with a team? Does a writer bring a site-specific idea to someone like you? How does that happen? What is the writer's part in this?
Well, I think it kind of depends on whether or not the writer is self-producing or not. I've had a lot of young artists approach me about doing site-specific work over the years, and I'll tell you a story. This one young guy came and said, well, I've written a piece for a bar and I'm not having any luck. And I said, well, where are you going? And then he named all of these very well-known, very fancy nightclubs, right? And I was like, water seeks its own level, you know? If you want to write, first of all, the first question I would ask is if you're thinking about doing something site specifically, why? Why? Because it's hard. It's harder to do that to do a show in a theater. So obviously right now there's a why, COVID, right? But and then what's the neighborhood, and do you belong to that neighborhood? Somebody a while back asked me about, you know, education, and we're not an educational organization, but this will be in May. But I also am a TDF mentor, and so if somebody wanted to bring a group of students, we would work to try to make that happen. We're also doing this so it's wheelchair accessible, and we're talking with TDF about also doing this for the deaf and figuring out how to do closed captioning in a way that works. So we're thinking also about accessibility, but that's the first question to ask yourself. I mean, why? Why do you want to do something site specifically? And then where do you want to do it? Do you want to do something site specifically because it's a neighborhood that you belong to and you feel that those voices need to be represented? And have you talked to people where you feel like you're the right person to represent those voices? Because that's very important. Whose stories are we telling? And then secondly, if you have figured out all those things and it's very important to you, then I think you need to figure out a partner. Yes, I think it's important to have a producing partner. I tell you, when I first started, I was knocking on doors. I mean, literally, you know, I mean, now to do indoor work is, you know, silly because nobody can go indoors to do anything. And there is this big program, which I think Carla Hoke Miller spoke to everybody about.
129 streets in the 5 boroughs.
Yeah, that is kind of pretty fantastic. And I don't know if that application is now closed or it's still open. But
It's just opening, I think. It's just opened.
But I think also, you know, if there's something that you want to do with a group and you have a bunch of performers and would like to use the streets, you can go through this open streets program, but I didn't do that. And, you know, I'm in conversations with this wonderful minister in a church. He has a garden that he loves doing performances in. So I think it's about, you know, also it's site-specific work is more important than almost anything else is who are your partners and why? And what do they have to gain from letting you do something in their space? If it's a church and they have a garden and you can bring those performers there and you can bring attention to that place and you can handle doing it safely right now, go, you know, churches, you know, I talked to this minister, he was so depressed because these churches have had, first of all, they're struggling enough with the fact, with, you know, having enough of a congregation or temple, but also their mission is to serve their communities. So think of a place that's, you know, try to think of a place that's low-hanging fruit, if this is something you want to do.
I want to bring up a nuts and bolts question. Over the years, what percentage of the work have you worked with equity and union actors, and how much of it have you done with non-union?
Over the years is the significant point because I said earlier, the work that we did in the 80s and 90s with equity, they would never, ever let us do today. When we did Orestes, over by this twisted metal pier that jutted out into the Hudson. Jefferson Mays was our Orestes. I don't know if you all know who Jefferson Mays is.
Of course we do.
Well, at the time, nobody did. And he was our Orestes. And we literally, I can show you a picture. I would not do this myself today because it was kind of, I don't know what's wrong with my cursor. Something's happening here. Hold on, let me see if I can show you.
You still have sharing. I'm pretty sure you still have sharing.
Yeah, I'll show you. Hold on, a picture of Jefferson Mays. It was a twisted metal pier that jutted out over the Hudson, and Jefferson Mays climbed to the top of it And it was so dangerous. And Equity came, and we had a container, and in the container we had our Equity cot, and they came, and it was so far out of the box that they didn't even, there wasn't a box. It was so far out of the box, and they just came, and they just thought to themselves, if nobody complains, I think we'll just let it go by.
Yeah, that wouldn't happen today.
No. So let me see if I can. Yeah, I'll show you this picture, which you'll get a kick out of. What happened here? It disappeared.
Anybody who's struggling about Jefferson, I am my own wife. He basically just did a one-man he did a one-man Christmas carol last year, I think it was, and he's prominent in the commercial theater world right now. He's seen him all over the place.
He also does a lot of oh wait, I'm just going to do it this way because I don't know what else to do. Okay, here we go. It's not letting me open this thing. I don't know what's wrong with my computer these days. I don't want to.
What happens with screen share is it tends to hold on to the image that you showed last. If you can close that image on your screen,
Okay.
maybe it'll be a little bit friendlier.
Yeah.
So
Anyway.
my assumption is that because of the unconventional nature of a lot of what you do, it probably doesn't fit easily into equity categories. So it's probably hard to come up with a agreement for
I don't
some
have
of
an
it.
agreement with them, and it's purposeful.
Okay.
Every time I do a show, like the last show we did an off-Broadway agreement. I don't want to have to worry about that with equity, I have to say. And then we have another series that we did called Uncommon Voices. And
Yeah, that was when we got back together.
And that was we did a series of developmental readings that then we sold to allarts.org. So we have 8 episodes of these developmental readings that are also interviews with artists, with a partner, wonderful filmmaker named Jesse Green. And I was very proud about that work. That one of the pieces we did was a play by Kevin R. Free that Andre DeShields performed that got 230,000 views, of course.
230,000 views.
Yeah,
Nice.
So
I'm happy when we get 200.
Well, that's like what social media does, right? So yeah.
Well, I got to learn. I've got to learn from you. You do this all very well, and I could learn a lot from you, I think. I'm going to, because it's 6:10. I'm going to invite people to come back into the room. I'm going to thank you, Anne, for being with us. It's been inspiring, I think, for everyone. I know it has been for me. You're very articulate about things that I struggle to say, so I appreciate that as well. In particular, your multi-tiered approach to being actively inclusive I need that list. I need that checklist because I'm not doing enough of it. And I want to thank you for being here, and I want to remind everybody that we do this every week. I don't remember what I'm doing next Friday, but I have somebody coming to talk about something. So plan on being with us. Let me also unpin us because we're all in spotlight right now, and we'll go into gallery view. People, you can come back in, and as a reminder, my weekly reminder, we do this. We've been doing this at first for free. We've evolved to a place where we do need some sort of support. So if you're not a member of TRU, and it's very easy to become a member, really. It's only $95 for a year. And then you're an official member of this community. But if you can't do that, then you can give us a small donation every week. Just even something small helps. It keeps us going. I also am very pleased to say that we got our PPP loan from the government. So we're not going anywhere. So I'm not going to say oh, I'm desperate for your support, but I am going to say that your ongoing support is what will keep us going. So consider that. And I guess I'll end the YouTube just about here.